is day one of MEF Connect's Omnichannel 2023, the fourth iteration of our flagship Omnichannel event. And wow, this microphone is working very well indeed. It is very, very loud. So thank you for rejoining this session. And now we're going to be having a session from our lead sponsor, netnumber Global Data Services. We have heard, and indeed we know ourselves, the importance of a mobile phone number. There are many of us in this room who have had the same mobile phone number for 10, 15, even more years. That has stayed with us. It might not be the most memorable of numbers in terms of a fancy number string or anything like that, but it belongs to us. And we really feel as if we have ownership of it. Now, in recent years, the power of the phone number has increased. The phone number now essentially is on par, or in certain places, and indeed from the perspective of many people, has actually more power than a national identity card or even a passport or something like that. It is very, very much associated with an individual, that number. We all know what it's like to go out having forgotten your mobile phone at home. And I remember once, many years ago, going on a business trip to Italy, parked my car in Manchester airport, left, flew to Italy, got to Italy. I didn't have my mobile phone. It was literally, I felt a sense of panic, real panic, not having a mobile phone. Then you have to think back to when many of us started work. There were no mobile phones. There was a fax machine. There was the postal service, things like that, people, those things. And we survived just fine. But the world has moved on. Mobile numbers, or indeed numbers in general, have become absolutely integral to our daily lives. And actually verifying those, being able to verify them at scale, etc., is super important. So netnumber, as their name suggests, Global Data Services do exactly that. We're going to be talking about the power of phone numbers, what phone number intelligence can really do for any business and any type of organization around the world. I'd like to invite my speakers. First of all, we have two in person. We've got Catalin Badea, who is VP of Product Management with netnumber. A round of applause, please, for Catalin. And also, we've got Bonnici from HAUD, who is VP of Pre-Sales and Product Management. He's got the pre-sales hat as well. And joining us online, hopefully, is Ritu, who manages the carrier relation side of things for the messaging division of Rakuten Viber. Ritu, a very warm welcome. Hi.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you as well. So we're all set. Now, there's no presentation for this one. We're just going to get straight into it. Catalin, you are at the forefront of developing products and solutions for netnumber in this area. From your perspective, your personal perspective, your company's perspective, how important is that phone number?
Sure. So, well, the way I think of it is that the phone number is kind of the common denominator for pretty much everything that we do these days. And some things are obvious when we're signing up for, apps like Viber or WhatsApp or one of these apps for providing the phone number as the user ID. But even beyond that, looking at other services like Amazon and Google, they provide you an option to sign up with email or with a phone number. And increasingly, in a mobile first world, people are using the phone number to sign up to these services. So even when the phone number is not the main user ID, it still gets collected by businesses as part of the sign-up process. Maybe for two-factor authentication, I guess that's the common, reason you're asking for a phone number, but not only, have a number to contact your potential customer. So in one way, shape, or form, phone numbers get into, the CRMs, the databases of businesses. It's a piece of information that, as opposed to addresses that are not uniform in the entire world, opposed to other data points, the phone number has a certain level of uniformity and it's there. So from that point on, you have the phone number. The phone number also tells a story. That's something that it becomes more and more important. So in the fight against fraud, when you're looking on, should I onboard this customer? Is this user behaving properly on my platform? Yes or no? Do I even need to keep this user on my platform because maybe the number, deactivated or some other activity like that? So that's the part where the story about the phone number becomes important. Is it a fresh number? Was it assigned to you, James, for 15 years? Did you switch carriers recently? Maybe it's a fraudulent port attempt by someone who's trying to take over some of your accounts. So all these pieces of data, and this is, like you said, this is our bread and butter, all these pieces of data enable businesses to better secure their processes. If it's about user onboarding, if it's about, in a C password, if it's about making sure that the messages that are flowing through your system are legitimate messages coming from a valid sender going to a valid destination. All these pieces of the data are really critical, in my opinion, to secure processes and to optimize them.
Thank you. Ritu, lovely having you with us from Viber. Many people, and I keep stressing at events where we have Viber RMF member, they were the original business messaging chat app, been around and doing that since 2010. So lovely having you with us. It's also important for people to realize that Viber, you have been a very, very big and continue to play a very important role in the world of voice wholesale and indeed SMS wholesale. So Ritu, could you just tell us at Viber, when it comes to the whole verification piece, knowledge about phone numbers, how important is that to your business, getting that right?
Yeah, great question, James. And rightly mentioned by you, Viber has been the pioneer for introducing the business messaging to the ecosystem. So talking about phone number verification, we at Viber would always want to have a seamless and a streamlined onboarding of our end users by ensuring that the verification process are pretty user-friendly without compromising the security. So it basically helps us to implement a very prudential way of onboarding our consumers and give them a safe and protected environment while using this app. I mean, a new user is undergone a sagacious number verification process where we find the authenticity, like Catalin just mentioned, it has a story to tell. And if we notice some sort of an adverse activity in the past that might have occurred, and then we accordingly take the steps to be not onboard them or onboard them if it is all authenticated properly. So we talk about even the ongoing journey of an end user that the number verification process helps us to ensure that the numbers are in the opt-in list and have been willingly provided by the users. We are also aiding the compliances with the data privacy or anti-spam laws for that factor. It helps us to have a guarantee that the right messages are going to the right number of people, leading to a high response rates or increased customer engagement. Basically, it helps us in the campaign effectiveness overall.
Thank you very much, Ritu. Now let's bring Ron into the conversation. Ron, you work for HAUD. You're one of the leading independent SMS firewall providers out there. You manage the product management side of things. So your key clients are going to be mobile network operators around the world. I'm sure you've got some messaging aggregators and indeed probably some of the people in this room as your clients as well. So what is it that when you've got your firewall solution as well? So the security side, absolutely. But what is it that your clients are really, really looking for when it comes to absolutely securing them? And how important is it to have all the traffic flowing through them verified?
Thanks, James. First of all, I would like to thank Catalin for inviting me to this panel. Yeah, number intelligence, right? Sounds cool.
Yeah.
But in reality, it has a lot of value, right, for us. And I think it's also, if you look at it, the way the operators now are also enabling this information, right, data to brands, to the like of HAUD, right, and the likes of netnumber. There's a lot of value in the number, as you said, because the number, most of the time, it belongs to a certain person. From our perspective, from a messaging perspective, right, we are in the A2P messaging business, there are various use cases. One of them is how to maximize your profitability, right, basically on routing the numbers. But as you said, what is the biggest challenge that we face at the moment? The biggest challenge is security, right? And we've seen deterioration of SMS channel because of frauds, because of AIT, because of voice smishing. Yeah. And this doesn't impact only SMS. So we spoke about the RCS, for example, right? So all the channels are subject to fraud, right? But let's talk about SMS. What are we doing with all this? What is the biggest challenge? As I said, we have AIT, we have smishing. One of the biggest challenges that we face is that most of the operators, right, due to regulations, due to regulatories, don't allow scanning of the content, right? So that's a big headache because on one hand, you have to comply and protect the subscriber because we have a duty to protect the subscriber. But on the other hand, us as vendors, we cannot look at the content, analyze the content, do anything with the content, right? So here, the phone, right, the number becomes of much more value, right? It always was, but now it's becoming more valuable, this information. So what I'm talking about here is basically this basic but important checks, right? That helps us not only to optimize the operational complexity. Why I'm mentioning this? Because if, as you said, we have to look at all the traffic that is coming in, that's a lot of traffic, right? So we need to identify what could be potentially the fraudulent, the suspicious numbers. And that's why netnumber, for example, provides certain intelligence that states, for example, that your number is not at risk, right? Not a high risk number.
So having a long-term history will obviously help with that, a good pattern of behavior. Now, I've been asked this by a number of people. So we wind back the clock many, many years when mobile phones first came along. And we all remember the days, well, still around, many, many countries have a very, very high prepaid penetration. So the majority of mobile subscribers don't actually have a contract and pay for things after the fact. They actually pay in advance, prepaid. And I remember the days when there was a real differentiation, kind of like poor man, rich man, in terms of the services available. So if you're prepaid, you get the most basic thing. You don't get access to voicemail. You got to pay for it, etc. And if you're postpaid, you're king of the hill. You get everything. Now, isn't it a little bit unfair, or it's how it is, James? Just get over it and get on with it. That there are people who I like having the same phone number for having had that for 15 years. I value that. But there are going to be lots of people who actually don't care what their number is, as long as they can reach their friends on the social media apps, all this stuff instantly. They don't actually care what the number is. So they're actually might be rapidly changing their number. Does that mean ultimately, if you change your number regularly, possibly through no fault of your own as well, that this counts against you? Catalin?
Yeah, I'll say not necessarily. And, to your point, James, I think that, this type of behavior where people were discarding numbers and getting new SIM cards over and over, I think that's fading away because, first of all, you have number portability now in, I think it's 110 countries and territories by now. So in all these countries, if you want to benefit from, the best offer, you just port your number. And, in the past, it was easy to discard a number. Nobody cared about that. But now, you probably have all your 50 services that requested for two-factor authentication. So that's a big hurdle to when deciding to renounce your number and get a new one. So I'd say by now, at least in those geographies where it's possible from a porting standpoint, people kind of stick with their numbers. But then, back to your question, changing the number over and over, it's nothing, negative per se. It's more about how the data is correlated with other data points about that phone number. And what I'd like to say here is that we're not lacking data in the industry in general. There's plenty of data that is available. The problem is that the data is fragmented. In each country, each region, a different format of the data, a different commercial models to obtain the data, different access rights to the data. So if you're someone who actually needs to use phone number intelligence, it's really complex to kind of understand what's relevant to you and then take it from there and implement it. So what most people who need number data tend to do is kind of do it suboptimally, pick the top 2-3 things that are reasonably easy to implement and then discard the rest. So then you end up with an incomplete story and you're missing potentially super relevant signals because of missing all the data. And that's kind of the gap that we're feeling, kind of collecting all this data on a global basis. Any phone number in the world of the 10 billion plus phone numbers that exist, we do have data about those phone numbers, and it's normalized, same API, same pricing model. And we're also kind of abstracting the commercial and the T's and C's around them, to put it like that.
Fantastic, thank you. So Ritu, if we're talking about your business, you're clearly a very, very large concern. You have many thousands of enterprise clients around the world, and doing anything at scale is important. how are you finding the reality of being able to, for example, verify the integrity of a phone number and the authenticity of etc. at scale? Is that realistic to do it at serious scale today, given the technology and everything around?
Well, interesting question for the fact that after SMS have started getting, the quality of the SMS had started getting eroded thanks to the AIT or the messaging pumping of the market. We have seen that the boom in the OTT market has taken a very crucial place in the market. So our newest feature, which I would put forward, is our retail brands, like the enterprises or the brands which are connected to us and sending the BM traffic, have got a new feature from us, which is called the enhanced protection messaging. So basically, Viber security protocols and algorithms will highlight any non-compliant activity for that recipient number before the traffic is actually sent over the Viber business messaging. I mean, I would say such kind of a development has or can be used by many industries, right, from retail or hospitality or healthcare, but it is mainly and more effectively used by the banking or the financial industry, where they have sensitive data to be sent to their end users. So the destination number will be analyzed by algorithms, and if the number is found to be linked to any kind of, let's say, suspicious activity, for example, then the messages will not be sent and will be notified, or let's say a red flag will be notified to the retail brand. So this kind of feature has really got us the attention and given the protection to the brands that their traffic is sent to the end users who are meant to receive that traffic. So that has really helped us by these services of intelligence.
Fantastic. Now, unlike the UK, which is an island, the industry as a whole, when it comes to number verification, number security, etc., cannot surely operate as an island. How do you, netnumber, approach this industry? Because you've clearly got your own data, you built that up, but the real value surely comes being able to pool that with information you receive from other partners.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly the model that we're using. So yeah, we're operating a global network. We have hundreds of signals, our own signals, but we also complement this with really a lot of industry data. From phone number verification data to fraud prevention data. All these things are super important. Kind of bringing them together into a single numerical value, 0 to 5, the net number confidence index, and behind this simple numerical model, there is a lot of work and data that's behind that to help you with anything from phone number verification to fraud prevention.
So 5 on your index is high.
Yeah.
And 1 would be very, very low.
0 would be number invalid or fraudulent. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, Ron, so before I joined MEF, one of the things I did a lot in my daily life is actually work with mobile operators in your area of the world, helping to protect them from spam, fraudulent attacks, but ultimately to monetize their inbound A2P SMS. And one thing I saw many years ago, many years ago, is actually the great business opportunity, because it's fantastic having this as a service, being able to protect your subscribers if they're online and do all of these wonderful things. But at the end of the day, there's so much value, and I mean monetary value, sitting there with the data within mobile operators. What would you say to mobile operators who say, okay, James, Ron, Catalin, that's all good and well, but we've got data protection, we can't do anything with it? What would you say to that?
I think we've seen that they realize that the data that they have is valuable to the other players within the ecosystem, right? So that if they make it available, not only the vendors, but also the brands, right, can benefit from that. I'm not going to go into the marketing campaigns and stuff like this, which also will be part of the legal framework that needs to be abided to. But as you said, for example, if we take AIT, for example, right, it's important for us that a number you can show that there's a proof of life, for example, right, behind that number. So I know that this number is registered, for example, it has been active for the last X amount of years. As Caitlin said, they give you a rating on this number. So there are a lot of valuable information that you can take from these kind of data that they can provide you. And then along with other analytical patterns that we implement, right? Then you can have more of a 360 degrees protection, right? So basically you start analyzing these numbers, the suspicious numbers, to remove as well false positives, as you said, because sometimes you get numbers that they change hands easily, but there are different type of profiles that you can build, right? So to the operators, I always say that, listen, at the end of the day, it is important that the information that you have, the KYC, right, know your customer, is also valid not only for yourselves, but also for the brands, right? To trust and bring trust back to certain channels, right? Because we have seen channels that have, today we've listened to Lang, voices suffering from the same experience, right? So these channels that are trusted by everybody, right? But I always say this, I mean, I try to protect everybody, but who are the most subject to these attacks? These are the vulnerable people, right? So, like my parents, for example, elderly people. So, okay, I can tell them, Mom, don't open this message because the sender ID is not a bank, right? You know, nobody looks at it.
But the problem is bad actors are getting extremely sophisticated now, and they're employing psychologists, they're employing people who can write text super well and actually have far better calls to action than great brands. So it's tough in many cases just being able to, even as people who've been in the industry for many years, like us on stage, Ritu, and all of you in the room and online, it's sometimes very tough to work out what's false and what's real.
Yeah. And one final comment about operators doing and regulators, right? So I understand the content issue, data privacy, etc. But yeah, so the final thing is that, yes, no human should read the content because of data privacy, but there are systems now that are smart enough that they can start scanning certain patterns, right? So let's sit together, let's understand, right, before we just take a blanket approach and say no.
Because that is dangerous. Ritu, and believe it or not, but we're heading into the close of our session. Time flies when we're having fun. But what are the key headaches that Rakuten Viber's partnership with netnumber solves?
So netnumber has been key for many of our problems, not just for the enterprise part, but also the wholesale part, I would say. I mean, it's a breezer if we talk about Viber as an enterprise to spend tiny bit of the budget, like 000x cost on additional verification to give more value to the end users. But at the same time, it is even tougher to motivate, like being a wholesaler, to implement these lookups, because everybody wants to thrive in the world of cutthroat competition with thin margins for survivals. But netnumber has been helpful for us for this verification to make this whole process of wholesale SMS to become more robust, I would say, and gives us a more protection layer on top of the entire traffic, and thus gives us more of the leverage, or maybe we can use this as a harness to protect against any of these threats or suspicious activities happening. So sometimes it is the most basic of the practices that allows us to achieve greatness. And I think this little effort of doing this prior verification, costing little penny, can make a big difference in the long run.
Well, it's a very good point you make. So myself, Ross, and Beatrice here at MEF, we had the pleasure of representing MEF at AfricaCom, and Catalin, it was good seeing you and other people at AfricaCom as well. But I was talking to aggregators from the region, and many of the aggregators, for me, I found that personally astounding, but many of the aggregators didn't actually use a lookup service prior to sending things out because of that cost you just mentioned, Ritu. But I'm thinking, hang on a second, it is a fraction of a penny, and surely actually using that basic lookup from a company such as netnumber instantly will pay dividends, surely, in your messaging chain, because it will ultimately, hopefully, reduce possibly the costs of their enterprise clients and to solidify that business. But Catalin, what would you say to, literally, there are so many businesses out there in the world of messaging who are not even using basic lookups today just to save that fraction of a penny?
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, an obvious example here is that, you know, even one message that gets incorrectly delivered to someone and convinces them to, you know, give out their mobile banking password or anything like that. So that could result into 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 of euros, pounds being wiped out from a single account. So when you're looking at, it's a fraction of a penny to do some basic verifications.
But this is the point, though. It's
Yeah.
not the aggregator doesn't ultimately. Obviously, we have a duty of care. Let's say a responsible aggregator would care, but an irresponsible aggregator wouldn't care because those subscribers aren't their clients.
That's correct. Yeah. From an aggregator perspective, what I would say though is, margins are super thin. And if you can use phone number intelligence to determine if a message should be routed at all, does it come from a valid sender? Is it going to a valid destination? You can improve on your, cost from that perspective. And then, add fraud on top. You don't want to be the conduit of fraud on behalf of your customers. And I think the business case is there.
Fantastic. So if you're wanting to be a responsible player in the industry, absolutely use the services from companies such as yourselves. Fantastic. Ron, we are coming up to the close of our session. Time flies, but our 30 minutes together is almost up. What are your final remarks with regards to this topic? And again, just leading on from what we were just discussing with Catalin, those companies out there that aren't doing anything in this sector, aren't using the services of companies like NetNumber, that's the first point. But then also mobile operators that don't understand the opportunity. What would you say to them? So two-part question.
Good. I think I will answer both with the same one, actually. This collaboration is key, right? So as you said, and Catalin said, it's like nobody can do it on their own, right? So NetNumber remove the complexity of certain integrations, right? Having to speak to all the operators, gathering all this information. So you can focus, as HAUD, we can focus on our own business, right? So we don't have to worry about from where I can get this data and stuff like this. So collaboration, operator, NetNumber, vendors like HAUD from a security perspective, the brands, the aggregators, everybody needs to work together, right? Because the information is kind of spread, right? Everybody has a piece of the information. But together, I think we can make, let's put it this way, the world safer from a messaging perspective.
Thank you very much. Ritu, final word from you. And sorry you couldn't be join us, but good old passport issue precluded you, but you joined us online. What would you say, your last comment?
My last comment, I would say, is, first of all, I didn't even receive my passport as yet, so I'm still waiting. But for the companies who aren't using it as yet, are likely to have been ambushed, at the end of the month, with big discrepancies that can take enormous time and manpower to have those disputes resolved. So these businesses should certainly relinquish the age-old beliefs or the methods, because in today's day and age, we really need to have that fast pace and to use this kind of intelligence to excel in everything what we're doing.
Thank you. And Catalin, final word. So there are some companies out there that can literally do, within one company, can do so many elements of what you do as a specialization, And what would your advice be to people out there thinking, because it's a different way of approaching it, going with a one-stop shop. But what's your advice to people? Because on the face of it, it seems a little bit tough. Okay, you've got HAUD for this element, you've got NetNumber for this element, you've got another company for that element, when you could go to one. What are the advantages of going with individual specialists?
Yeah, two things. I would say, first of all, the ecosystem is well interconnected. So, we're representing different sides of the ecosystem, but we work together. So definitely if we, encounter someone who would need a solution that's not fully resolved by NetNumber, but, someone like HAUD could resolve that, we would, kind of know to bring each other, let's say, in the discussion. So that's something that's part of that. The other thing that I would say to, those type of customers would be run a test, run a trial. You're not convinced of the value of the data. It takes, little time, little effort, run through all the data points and, the different types of services that can help you with number intelligence, and, let us work with you to, kind of prove the business case.
Fantastic. And finally, we're all here ultimately to do business. If someone wanted to contact NetNumber, how would they get hold of you?
netnumber.com, and we're obviously here for the next 2 days.
Very simple, folks. Very, very simple. So, Catalin, thank you very much indeed. Ron, thank you. Ritu, thank you for joining us remotely online. All the best to you. And as always, we appreciate your sponsorship, NetNumber. Thank you for making our forays into the real world a real possibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.